Today, I'm speaking with two resilient breast cancer, not survivors, but thrivers, Sangeeta Murjani and Shruti Babu. Sangeeta Murjani is a strong, generous, smart, and influencer and a role model to many women and men. Sangeeta is a senior and seasoned leader in the financial services industry. She's an executive leader at Fidelity Investments. She's held a range of senior leadership positions within Fidelity. What sets her apart is that despite being so successful, accomplished, and confident, she practices gratitude. Among the many things she's grateful for, she has told me that she's grateful for her cancer journey as that has made her a better person. Sangeeta lives in Boston with her husband Rajesh Tekchandani and her two beautiful kids, Pooja and Sahil. And then meet Shruti Babu, a mother of two and breast cancer survivor, not survivor again, thriver. Shruti shares with us her story of fighting cancer, inspiring openness in her community, and transforming her purpose and relationships through her journey. Shruti is a lifestyle blogger and an Instagram influencer. Through her page, Pajama Mama 512, here she shares her behind the scene life as a mom with breast cancer. Today, she is using her platform to raise awareness and help others with their breast cancer journey.
Thank you, Seema.
Thank you, Seema, for having us.
So without further ado, let's dive into our topic. So Sangeeta and Shruti, let's talk about first and foremost your life and lifestyle before the diagnosis. Sangeeta, you want to go first?
Sure, I'm happy to go first. Life before the diagnosis, I think it was pretty good. Life was going well. Work was busy. My kids were teenagers. One had just started high school. The other one was in senior year. We were just about to go on vacation. So life was overall very good. I think what I missed in terms of some signals, though, was the fact that a few years before my diagnosis, there were times when stuff would happen, like I would have dizzy spells or something. It was like my body's way of talking to me. And I was like hushing it. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. I'll move on. And in retrospect, I wish I hadn't hushed it. But life was pretty good till one day I kind of felt a lump in my right breast.
So this was self-exam kind of a thing.
Well, it was diagnosed. I was sitting in India, just heading to a vacation in Singapore in a few days. And it was actually diagnosed thanks to a bad meeting because I was calling into the US and this meeting wasn't going well. It was 2 a.m. in the morning in Pune. And I just started to stretch my arms. So I stretched my arm and start to, just kind of, I was feeling lethargic and stressed. And so very soon my hand goes to the right side of my right breast and I feel a lump. And for a second, I was like, what is that? I'd had my mammogram just 6 weeks ago. I'd got the all clear. So it was nothing, is what I thought. I went on with my meeting then called my doctor back in the US and said, what should I do? I think I feel a lump.
This is how you found out. And Shruti, how did you find out? What was your diagnosis like?
Yeah, so mine was also very interesting. It was actually the week of Diwali. It was a Monday night and I was getting ready to take a shower at night. And just while in the shower, I just felt something in my left breast. It felt hard as a rock. And I was just like, okay, this is probably breast milk, dried up breast milk. I just had two kids. I breastfed both and didn't think much of it. One of my breasts was larger than the other. And so it was just really, everything started after, I got diagnosed, it made sense, but it was just, I found it in the shower. It was a lump. Same thing. I was 38. Mammograms are now, they're recommended at 40. So I was very lucky that I caught it myself, while showering.
So in both cases, I'm seeing it's like self-diagnosis rather than mammogram. So that's something to be really, really aware of, to be so aware of your body and do those self-exams, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And, especially in Asian women and Black women, it's very common to have dense breast tissue. I don't know if Shruti, that happened in your case, but that was very much the diagnosis I had. And that's why they didn't see it in a mammogram. I'd actually had a mammogram. I diagnosed myself in mid-December. I had a mammogram in October, and before that, that year in April. And when I was diagnosed, it was a 5 centimeter, it was a golf ball in my breast. So it wasn't tiny.
Yeah.
So absolutely, check yourself and be
Yes.
self-aware.
So Shruti, what was your life like? What were you up to when this diagnosis came across all of a sudden? You were, of course, woefully unprepared.
Very, yeah. I was so 38, 2017 started out as one of the best years of my life. I was traveling a lot and I felt my best. I looked my best. I was, asked to be on a magazine cover. Like life was just going amazing, and I was like, wow, this is fantastic. And I felt like I ate pretty healthy. I lived a good lifestyle, like I checked all the boxes. And then, so I feel like life was normal, and it was great before the diagnosis.
And how old were your kids?
My kids, when I was diagnosed that year, they were 3 and 5.
Oh my goodness. So, what did you do right after? Like, walk us through the time when it was diagnosed, when it was confirmed by the doctors once, twice. That, I don't have words. Like, how was it devastating? How was it? Like, tell us a little bit about that part.
Should I go first?
Yeah,
please
sure.
do.
So for me, found it myself, and then the very next day, I called my gyno, asked her if she would confirm it, and it was, that I remember that first day just feeling it, and that it was a Monday, all day Tuesday, because I made an appointment with my gyno, and she didn't get me until Wednesday. So all Tuesday, I just spent crying and scared, and I thought it was just dried up breast milk, but then you get that, is it cancer? What is that? Is it a lump? And then I was just crying because I just didn't know. Then I went into her. She also confirmed she felt something. She sent me in for a mammogram right away. And then they did two rounds of mammograms. And then they did, the sonogram, everything that day. They sent me in the very next day for a biopsy. And it was scary. It was a scary time. That period from the day you find the lump yourself till you just don't know what it is. I feel like for a lot of women that I've talked to, it's extremely scary because it's that waiting game. You don't know what it is, what's going to happen. You just want to know right away. You literally want to know immediately, like, what was that, And so, for me, it was, then that very next day I hopped on a plane and I went to Indianapolis to visit my in-laws. And I remember I got the call while sitting with all my in-laws side with my 90-year-old grandmother. And my phone rings. It's a Sunday night. It's my gyno, and she says, Shruti, can you go somewhere quiet? And you just know, right? And so she asked me to go into another room, and I did. And she said, "I'm so sorry, Shruti, but your results came back positive." And for a second there, I was like, "Oh," because the word positive is so happy, and I was like, "Oh," as soon as she said that, I was like, "Okay." And I don't think I really probably heard anything else she really said after that. I think it was on speaker. My husband heard it all. I was just like, I was 38. Like, I don't have any family history of breast cancer. I'm healthy. I eat healthy. Like, why? How? Why? I had so many questions, right? So that's what it was like in the beginning stages for me. And then everything moved really fast. They got me in to an oncologist and a breast surgeon, a plastic surgeon. It just moves after that. Like you make some big moves very fast. And I remember my oncologist said, "Hey, I need you to clear your schedule out for 1 year." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And that was hard for me because I'm a busy bee and I keep my calendars packed. So that part was extremely hard for me. So thank you.
And Sangeeta, of course, you were working nonstop, driving for an hour, coming back, flying everywhere, doing tons of meetings, and of course, teenage kids. You were not anywhere thinking.
I was not preparing to slow down by any chance.
Yeah.
And, I was in India with my parents, and I was heading to Singapore, and my husband and kids were going to join us there, and we were going to have a fabulous vacation with my brother and his family. So when I called my doctor and said I felt this lump, and she's like, just get an ultrasound, just go to any doctor in Pune, in India. So we happen to have a very good friend who's a breast oncologist. So I go to him, and he does an ultrasound, and he doesn't feel good. And so he goes into a different room and tells my father, I'm pretty confident it's malignant. I want her to go back home to Boston. I don't want her to travel with the news. So he tells me, cancel your vacation plans, go back. I'm like, if there's nothing to worry, why do you want me to go back? And he goes, just go back. Boston's the best place in the world for medical care. So I pack myself back up. I tell my kids and my husband we're not going on the vacay, and everyone's devastated. No one cares that mom could have cancer. It's like, we're going to Singapore. Why aren't we going? And the cancer word didn't even hit us. I came back here. I went to Mass General where I had done my mammogram, and based on the report the doctor had given them, they actually did a needle biopsy. So just a quick one. And I remember a junior doctor did a needle biopsy. She took some tissue out of the breast lump, nothing. Then she took another piece of tissue, and then, she had an assistant there, and they started muttering. And, I was there with my husband, didn't think anything. She went and called the main oncologist. He came into the room and he goes, well, I don't know how else to put it other than the fact that you have breast cancer. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, similar to Shruti, what you said, I don't think I heard much after that. I've often reflected since that day that, I'm a very strong person. I can take a lot of pain, and I just go with the punches. And I think my strength was blinding my feelings. I didn't even know what to feel. He said, why don't you change and let's sit down and talk. And when we walked to his office just around the corner, when I sat down in his office, I shed a tear, which is a rare thing for me to do. And I didn't know why was I shedding a tear. And the nurse said to me, it's okay. Anyway, the doctor sat us down, and then, there was nonstop biopsy, MRIs, because I wasn't diagnosed through a mammogram. But within 2 days, it was we knew exactly what kind of cancer I had and everything. And then the doctor said, well, we're 2 days from Christmas. We're not going to do anything right now. If you want to go back on your vacation plans, do it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Vacation is the last thing on my mind. And my brother had flown in from Singapore by then. As soon as he knew it was positive, which is generally a good feeling, yep. The news was negative. And I'm like, forget it. Anyway, my brother and my husband then decided that night they booked tickets for all 4 of us to go to Singapore. And for the next 10 days, we had a blast. We were like, we'll deal with this when we come back, and let's just go have fun. So it was just a bunch of mixed emotions for us.
That was the best decision you ever took, because that gave you the safe harbor for this chaotic news and kind of prepped you and you could embrace the news with your brother, with your family, with your close ones during the holidays, and then start the year with whatever you take off. It's interesting. Shruti said she found it on Diwali, and you said like before Diwali, and you found it before Christmas holidays. Yeah. I mean, oh my God, this is scaring me.
Well, it's interesting that she said that, because as soon as we found out, my husband asked the oncologist, when is chemo and all going to start? And he told us that we could have a week off, and we went to Disney World. We're going to go to the happiest place on earth. I had a 3 and a 5-year-old. And I'm like, where can you go in the world to forget all your problems? So it was literally Disney World, and we didn't think about it much there. We didn't talk about it. We turned all of our phones and stuff off, and we really enjoyed it. And it was just like you. I was just like, okay, before this starts, let's do this as a family, And it was awesome.
That's the best decision you took. You prepared yourself after that completely. Then you knew, okay, let's face it.
Exactly.
Okay. And then the treatment started. So now tell me a little bit about how did the family handle it? Your spouse, your kids, your parents, sibling, friends. How was it breaking news to them and breaking news to the extended family, and friends that you don't see all the time? Was it extremely overwhelming? or did it help you in some ways that, you got a lot of love and support and, this amazing positive vibes and energy? How was, like, tell us a little bit about all that too.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first this
Yeah.
time, Shruti. I would say, I feel really blessed to have an amazing family. And I have actually a very dear friend who was 9 months into her breast cancer treatment when I was diagnosed. And that night when we came home from the biopsy, my friend Kajal came over and her hair was just starting to grow back. And I think that was the sign of hope that both my kids needed. Because these kids are almost adults, right? They're 17 and 15, and they just found out that their mother has breast cancer. And they didn't even know what to do or say. And they saw her and they saw a ray of hope. And I think right from that night, my brother then showed up a few hours later. And, I was just surrounded by people. I think it was hardest for me to break the news to my parents, my mom and dad, especially my mom, because she was the caretaker for my dad who was going through his own cancer journey. And I just thought it was unfair for her to have to experience her child go through cancer. And I know she was on a train going somewhere. She and my dad were traveling and she cried the whole night. So that was the hardest part. And then, my husband and I, very matter of fact, we called a few close friends. We told them. Some cried with us. Some were like just angry that, in a small circle of 11 to 12 people, I was the second one within 9 months to be diagnosed. And, but everyone was like, they were there for us. And I think just the way the support system came together, I kind of knew it, but I had never experienced it. So I didn't know what it would be like. The other thing for me is, I had a pretty high pressure job in financial services. I called my boss and I said, hey, listen, Jack, I was going to go on vacation. And this is before, we were going to Singapore. And, he's a pretty results driven guy. And he said to me, he goes, listen, do what you need to do. Do you need me to make any calls to any doctors? And I said, no, I think I have that covered. And then he said, once the treatment starts, you tell me what you want to do. You want to come to work? You want to take off? The beautiful thing was he didn't make any decisions for me. He said, make your decision and I will support you in every way. So it was like an overwhelming amount of support that I felt. Like I didn't even know how to deal with it, honestly.
That's one of the major reasons that you healed so well. You are thriving now that about the love and the support that you got. I'm so thankful, and I want to do a huge shout out to all these people that you mentioned or didn't mention that were there for you that day and for next 9-10 months and even today, who gave you that, who showed that compassion to you, whom you could depend on. Shruti, I want to know from you now.
Yeah, so my story, there's a little bit of good, a little bit of bad. I was 38. I was, I didn't know anybody else in my family that had it. I didn't know personally anyone that had it. So I thought my parents were actually in India when I was diagnosed. They go to India, 6 months out of the year. They leave in September, come back, whatever, in February. And then they were there. So I'm like, okay, how do I even begin to tell? So I started calling my mom, and my mom was like in denial. She was like, no. I've seen people that have breast cancer. They don't look like you. And I'm like, thank you, I think, and so she was just so in shock, so in denial. She was halfway across the world. And I think that's how she was processing it. Like, wait, what? No, you don't look like you have cancer. My dad is more like, he isn't into Ayurveda and stuff. So I think his brain at that time was more like, how can I heal her naturally? What should she eat? What should she drink? What should she do? So that's how they handle it. And then I thought the right thing to do was start calling my loved ones and telling them. I wanted them to hear it from me. And that's not always the right thing, because I would call a couple of people, and I remember one in particular said, don't tell anyone. Nobody will marry your daughters. And I was like, what? That blew my mind. Like, I was like, it was 2017, right? And so I was just like, okay, and that wasn't even that. I thought a few of those kind of calls. After that, I was like, I'm not going to make any more calls. I'm just going to have to let them figure it out. But so there was a few of that, but there was a ton more, like good things that came out of it. I immediately started sharing to social media, and I would get doctors, oncologists, everything all over the world that, oh, if you send us your reports, I'll take a look at it. So I had oncologists in Malaysia, Dubai, Singapore. I mean, you name it, just put their eyes on my reports. They all came back and said the same exact thing. So it was a good feeling. So it was like, I was glad I shared. At first I was like, should I have shared? And then I was really glad because there was a lot more positive that came out of it. And then, yeah, I mean, one of my friends, I think the coolest thing that came out of it is one of my really good friends, Lena, she set up a chemo calendar. I had 16 chemotherapies. It was every Friday. So she got 16 of my friends and family to sign up. And so it was, people flew from everywhere, drove from everywhere. And it was awesome because every Friday I would spend these 5-6 hours with someone that I really wanted to be there with. And it was almost like, I got excited to go to chemo, and then they would bring me a little, some of them would bring me smoothies or just a little present. And it was just like nice because it got me excited to go to chemo. Like, oh, who is it today? Oh, I haven't seen them in years. And so that was really cool. I enjoyed that. So there was a lot of good that came from that.
Shruti, listening to your story, it reminded me of my chemos. They were every other Friday.
Yeah.
And there was like, after the first chemo, the nurses figured out that there would be visitors every time.
Yeah.
So we got this corner area where you could fit a lot more chairs. And there's one friend who came to every chemo, but then there was family. My sister-in-law came from Connecticut. My sister-in-law flew in from Singapore, my friends, my kids, my mom, my dad.
Wow.
And so it was like every chemo, there was a friend and family. And, the nurses would gather around and I would be like after a while, dozed off, but I could hear the chatter around me.
Yeah. And it was nice. It's nice having that support.
About that.
So what I'm understanding is that you build yourself rather than beat yourself to it, like as if this whole community lifted you. And I just absolutely love hearing what you're saying. But I still have one big question, is that everyone wants to know, is the answer is that, and both of you can help. So initially, when people are finding out, some are close, some are not that close, what should they say? And more importantly, what should they not say throughout? And please share what you didn't like, what didn't work, because that can help so many people.
I think for me, personally, your friend, I think everybody means well. Everybody wants to help. They don't know how. Things that I just did not like hearing was, number one was, it's just hair. When I found out I was going to lose my hair to chemo, and everybody kept saying, it's just hair, it'll grow back. And I'm like, no, I think part of being a woman is also your hair that makes you sexy. And it wasn't just the hair. I was going to lose my eyelashes, my eyebrows, right? So I was going to look completely different. And so I do understand it's just hair. I get it. I know it's going to grow back. But I think for that, I was just not quite ready, to hear that. And the other thing, I think what I did like hearing is when people would say, what do you need? And I think that helped me a lot. When they wouldn't tell me, they would ask me, and some people would just say, I'll take your kids, I'll do this. And I'm like, just ask me. And they would say, what do you need? And I would tell them, because I've learned during that time, as much as I don't like asking for help, that I had to ask for help. And I would say, can you just make sure my husband and kids are fed? Can you do this? Can you, just take care of this? Little things. Ava has this recital. My daughter has this, can you go there and cheer for her and send me pictures? I love that they asked me, and then they genuinely wanted to do it, and they would do it. And everybody won, they were able to help me, and I was able to help get the help of my friends.
Yeah, that was a blessing. And Sangeeta?
Yeah, I would say very similar, don't assume, ask. When you're at loss of words, use fewer words, not too many. I've had friends who would, come and just start bawling about how hurt they were about my diagnosis. And I was like, I don't even know how to support you because I feel like the pits right now. So I would say, one, ask how you can help. people did the sweetest things. Some people would leave notes for me in my mailbox. Some people would leave flowers for me. One person made a scarf for me. And some friends would just come for a walk with me. And these are people who are fast walkers, but they'll walk at my pace. Many people brought food and then they realized my mom was here and it was actually more work for her to keep all that food. So then they learned not to bring food. I think what was really key for me, though, is that people were not just there to support me, they were here to support my husband and my kids. There were teachers from both their schools who supported them. There were family friends who took them out for dinners. There were golf buddies who made sure Rajesh would get out and golf. There were people who would come chat with my mom when I was sleeping. So she had some company and she had a place to vent. So the family needs as much support. The caretakers often need more support than you do. I was drugged. I was dazed. And so I am so grateful that the community showed up for the whole family and not just me.
Yeah.
So infused with love and positivity, a good heart goes a long way.
It does go a long way. Yeah.
Can see it in
Seema, we've been sharing a lot of positives, which is awesome. And for the most part, my journey was positive and taught me a lot. I do have to say to your question, if people are wondering, what to say, I think staying away from appearance is so important. Like my doctor told me on the 16th day of chemo or 17th day of chemo, your hair will start falling. I'm like, I have such a thick head of hair. It's not going to fall. 16th day, I put my hands through my hair and blotches of hair are coming off. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm not going to let my hair fall. So I asked my hairdresser to come shave my hair. I was okay with that. But when the eyebrows disappeared, like I felt some days I was looking at a ghost.
Yeah, same.
And so I think that's the hard part. Like when people, want to help, like just be there. Sometimes you don't have to say too much. And sometimes if you're not sure of the words, write it down. The written notes I could read at any time of the night. The text I could read anytime. So there's so many ways to communicate than just call me or be there in front of me.
Is there anything like Shruti shared that they shouldn't have said it?
I think the shouldn't is just like when people would want consolation from me because they wanted me to know how bad they felt for me. So they would come here and cry, which I understand if you're crying, but don't cry because you are hurt. Think about me. There's no way for me to support you. I have no energy to sit and talk. So I think when people look for support from you, I would just ask them to be mindful because, there's no gas in this fuel tank. It's hard to give.
Yeah, agree. I agree with her 100%.
All right. So we'll take a short break here and we'll continue this conversation. And I have a couple of more questions to ask these amazing ladies. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Would love it if you click on the like and subscribe button below. I bring positive stories from celebrities and philanthropists from around the world and stay updated with all things fab on my Fablife360 Instagram page. Also, if you are looking for something fun and inspiring to listen to, find my podcast Fablife360 on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.